هلا اجا الزعيم العظيم.
Da, 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 da. It's a really mediocre comedy. It's the Reviewanew podcast. I'm your co-host DJ.
And I'm Evan. I think you mean it's an Aladdin comedy.
Oh, forgive me. It's a really Aladdin comedy. And here we like to review movies from our favorite filmmakers, going through their films and looking at them as adults who are actually paying attention to what they're about and shit. And today we have Sacha Baron Cohen's most Ghostbusters 2016 of his career type of movie.
It's
in
not,
The Dictator.
It's not horrible. I will say that. It is not horrible, and it's a hell of a lot better than some of Kevin Smith's I Don't Give a Fuck Anymore.
True. But no, I mean that specifically, like, as I was watching it, I immediately had a flash to Ghostbusters 2016 in that feeling of like, oh, they're clearly improvising some of this. Now, Sacha's a very much of a better improver, and so is the dude who plays Nadal, the guy who's playing it.
Yeah.
But you still get that feeling of like, okay, let's hurry this along.
I know the bits you're talking about, and I think that I was gonna bring it up later, but I think that those bits a lot of times feel like just sketch comedy that
very much
is kind of funny in isolation, but actually really does not fit with the rest of the movie. And we can get to the specifics of that later, but yeah.
Well, before we get started, a little bit of news came to our attention since we recorded the last podcast. Borat 2 has already apparently been shot and screened.
Right.
Why
are we always the last to know about this?
But did the same thing happen with Kevin Smith? It was oh, we're reviewing Kevin Smith movies, and Jay and Silent Bob was like, oh, by the way, he's doing a reboot movie. It's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
So, that's apparently coming out sooner than you think. And I've heard some people on my Discord say it was actually, like, pretty cool. So, cool. Yeah, that's coming soon. So, we'll see what that's going to be like down the pike. I wanted to say before we got started, though, we go through these filmographers as we please, but if there's a particular film you'd be interested in hearing our perspectives on, that's only a one-time $50 donation to my Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/rapcritic, where you can also request albums and music videos for me to review on other channels. The link should be wherever the description is for wherever the hell you're listening to this. Or for only a $5 pledge, you can support the show on Patreon with the added bonus of getting to hear every even-numbered episode. So hit up the Patreon at patreon.com/REviewanew. Hopefully, this will be one of the numbered episodes where most people will be hearing it instead of the special one. But if not, I'll just edit it over there. But going back to it, it starts off. So one of the first things that, I had actually specifically paid attention to was like, oh, hey, they specifically, took it out of the area where Kazakhstan would typically be located. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he specifically wanted to distinguish it by making it a part of another continent.
I feel like it was supposed to be sort of, it was supposed to be close to Lebanon and having the tensions with Israel, which get mentioned quite a lot. Yeah. And, of course, the funny thing is a lot of the actors are Israeli. Yeah. A lot of the actors playing Wadishans are Israeli, so... And it's obviously a different part of the world, but I got a little bit of the Kim Jong-un vibe.
Yeah,
of just
in fact, the movie starts by saying it's dedicated to Kim Jong-un.
Oh, yeah, it does. I forgot that.
Or Kim Jong-il, excuse me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it starts off kind of looking like a documentary talking about the fake North African country of Wadiya. And they use some sort of surreptitiously sampled clips to be like, Obama's talking about him.
Yeah, that was pretty great. They edited news and Obama's speeches and stuff to make it sound. Yeah, that was actually very well done, I thought.
Yeah. And so I think, the first thing that kind of, the first hint that the movie's not comedically necessarily up to snuff is, like, the first, like, montage scene not montage, the interview that he gives with, what's his name? The dude with his name, Larry King? I keep wanting to say Larry David.
No, I think it is Larry King.
Yeah, it's Larry King. Larry King, he asks, like, do you have nuclear weapons? And he goes, like, in this accent that what was he doing? I was like trying to place it, and it's like he's like half going for something. Sacha Baron Cohen, and it's like the other. I'm like, I don't, because like Borat, like, sounded very distinct, and, like, of course he had worked on it for a long time.
Yeah.
This one was just like, what is he going for with this accent?
Yeah.
Like, half the time it just sounds like he's just straining his voice like this, and it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it didn't feel quite as consistent as some of the...
Yeah, but anyway, Larry King asked him, he says, do you have nuclear weapons? And Aladdin says, I can't hear you. I literally can't hear you. Every time you ask him the question, he says, oh, I can't hear you. I just can't hear what you're saying. And then he goes, oh, I'm going to go to another question. And he goes, okay, I can hear you now. And it's like, it was just such a basic gag beat that, like, it just felt like there should have been some sort of turn of phrase joke. Because usually these types of, like, dictators, they're like, oh, they'll be sort of speaking out of the side of their mouths with how they're saying. They'll use a bit of wordplay or joke, something like that. But with him, it's just like, oh, I just didn't hear it. Oh, I just didn't hear it. Oh, now that you're not asking, I'll hear you now. Like, it just felt such like a childhood sort of joke sort of thing. Like, a lot of this really felt like it was the writing of the Ali G movie again. So, where it's like the humor feels like slightly a little too immature.
Yeah, so I don't really remember that, and now I will sometimes forget stuff from a movie that I watched 2 days ago, but I don't really remember that, and there are different cuts of The Dictator, and I'm wondering if we're having another Mara. I mean, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near that bad, but I don't remember that. I do remember I thought, like, the beginning was pretty strong. I thought the sort of the running gag that gets established early on of him commanding people to be executed by, like, being friendly with them and then looking over their shoulder and doing a kill.
That little gag in and of itself was funny, and especially with how it plays out as the movie goes on. Yeah.
And the going to tour the nuclear weapons facility and then insisting that the missile has to be pointy.
Okay, see, with that scene, is like, it was funny. It was one of those scenes where it's like, this is funny at first, and then it's just like, this is going on just slightly too long. One or two of these gags need to be cut. Like, right around the time where he goes like, so the joke is that the weapons professor, Nadal, he's telling him, like, well, we're going to make it, circular like this. This is what it's going to look like so that we get it up. And Aladdin says, no, the weapon must be pointy so that we can, so that it sticks in the ground and attacks our opponents. And, like, Nadal's trying to tell him, like, the logical thing. And Aladdin keeps, like, saying these things that sound like cartoonish, silly things. And then he goes, like, I think you are getting your science from cartoons. And he's trying to act like he's not, but it gets slowly revealed that he is.
I actually thought that bit was really funny, where he says, was there a duck that his beak was on
when the explosion happens.
And then he goes, I think there was a person who had a disfigurement like that.
Yes, that was good.
I thought that was so funny. I genuinely thought that was really funny.
But, like, I felt like it should have cut there, like, maybe right before it got to the, you're specifically talking about Popeye, and you're specifically making the joke about the, and it's just like, and it kept going on where he's like, well, let me explain to you how the explosion would go. And it was just like, cut. Like, they just think they're so funny, and it's just like, get to the point.
So that bit didn't quite drag for me, but there were bits like, I don't know. How much do we want to skip around? Do we want to try and stay on it chronologically?
Yeah, fuck it. I'll bring us back on course.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
So
go off, King.
like we ever stick to it chronologically anymore. So much later in the movie, again, I'm assuming anybody who's listening has heard this. So much later in the movie, there's a bit where Nadal, who surprise is alive and in America, and Aladdin are on a helicopter, and we've established that Aladdin, Aladdin tried to kill Nadal.
Yes.
Nadal does not like him, does not trust him, is genuinely just very, like, disrespectful towards him, doesn't have any reason to respect him.
And it brings comedic bits from that dynamic.
And they're not friendly, but on the helicopter scene, there's this joke that they're speaking in Wadijin, and they're saying things that sound to this, Midwestern-y tourist couple on the helicopter with them like they're terrorists.
Yeah, like, I need to get the new car, the McLaren 911 or something like that, yeah.
And, and it's like, again, it's something that would be kind of funny in a sketch by itself.
Yeah, or if this was like a prank thing that was happening. Like,
right,
yeah.
But the way that Nadal is behaving in that scene is completely contrary to how his character is in the rest of the movie, or how like the relationship between them actually is that's established. So it's like all of a sudden he's behaving in this way that makes no sense for the character and the relationships we've established, just for the sake of the gag. And later on, the one that really kind of got to me was you know, so Aladdin, you know, we're ultimately supposed to root for him. It's like, yeah, he's a dictator, but he was literally raised to be a dictator. He's a complete idiot. He never had a chance to mature. And he...
Yeah, and like playing with that idea of him being really immature, but having all of this power. Like, I like that in certain respects.
And he tried to execute a bunch of people, but they never actually died, so whatever. But then they just casually mentioned that he raped several 13-year-old boys and traumatized them so much that they committed suicide.
Yeah,
and
from
it's like,
Menudo,
right. And it was like, that was just supposed to be this throwaway gag, but it's like, okay, but you just changed this character that I'm supposed to be rooting for from a lovable dumbass to an actual monster. Like, that actually is not like, there's a difference between, oh, he tried to execute a bunch of people because he clearly doesn't have any concept of what that actually is, to, no, he, like, physically raped a bunch of children. That's not the same.
Yeah. But, you know, it's supposed to be that sort of, I'm going so over the top, but, yeah, it's just like, there's a certain level where you go so far where it deflates the comedic, I don't want to say, like, maybe... not suspends the comedic disbelief. I feel like I'm mixing my metaphors by saying that, but it's like when you go to, you know, when you're like improving and you do something that's just like, you say something that's too unbelievable, so it's like, you got the cheap laugh, but now I don't believe the scene.
Well, because it's like the character's a dick and he says all this like offensive shit. But again, like, yeah, like, okay, this is somebody who raped a bunch of children. Like, that's in it. And there's also...
That's heavy.
Well, and there's also nothing... It also, again, doesn't make sense with the character. Like, the character we've established has sex with a lot of women.
Yeah, and that's the thing,
a lot of women, a few men, but there's no indication that he's a pedophile at any point.
Yeah, and there's a specific gag that he has sex with rich celebrities. Like, we open on, him having sex, and you see, it's Megan Fox. Yeah.
And it's Megan Fox as herself, and it's the idea that he pays all these celebrities to sleep with him, and he's got this huge wall.
That was actually a pretty good
funny.
gag.
But it's like, like, we've already established what his sexuality is like, is that he's hetero-flexible. No indication he's a pedophile. No indication he's a rapist. Like, and so bringing that in, it's like, okay, and we're supposed to still like him at the end.
But again, like even in that scene, like, the movie is so clear that it's going for the cheapest gags. Like, as soon as he's done having sex with her, he's like, oh, you have herpes now. And it's like, just like the cheapest gag. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's...
And like, and she's just cool with having herpes. Like, you know, it's just so dumb.
The cheap... Well, I mean, there's nothing to say she already have it.
No, but I mean, like...
I don't know. That didn't bother me so much. It's like, that's establishing who the character is. Like, that fits with who he's supposed to be. But yeah, that thing just, like, that... Those moments where the characters and the situations and the relationships we've established got sacrificed for a one-time gag, that bugged me.
For sure. And, the thing about, okay, like, again, he's Jewish, so, there's a bit of like, it's okay, we're here to joke about that, but there are one or two times where it was just so, like, fucking goddamn, all right. Like, at first, he does the gag of saying, and we will certainly not use them to attack oh boy.
I found that funny, and I think, like, for Sacha Baron Cohen, he... being Jewish, being of Israeli descent, like, for him, I think, like, that kind of stuff, he's not making fun of Jews, he's not making fun of Israel. There are so many countries in the Middle East that are extremely hostile to Israel, and so for him to sort of play one of those leaders who wants to attack Israel and play him as an absolute buffoon, I think probably, like, there's a lot of bite to that, and there's a lot of personal...
I get you.
I actually thought that bit was funny, and I understood why he was doing it.
I got it. No. Like, I guess it was like that. You know what it is? It's not like that one by itself. It was like, it kept happening to, like, some things like the part where he's playing the Wii Fit game and going into Munich and killing all the Jewish people. Like, I don't know, maybe maybe it's because I'm not Jewish, and so to me it just felt like, oh, what the fuck,
Well, I
dude?
mean, it was
like,
definitely shocking, but I feel like, yeah, I mean, the Wii game was like, that was a little over the top, but the like, but
the general idea of that character, you get what they're going for.
Well, and the continual hostility towards not like Jews as a whole, but Israel specifically, like that is satirizing a political reality that directly affects him and his family.
For sure. And there's one part where he talks about Ahmadinejad, and like, you know who that is?
Yeah.
So like, I just remember, like, I remember hearing about him and then seeing who he was and being like, huh, that doesn't look like someone who's like as formidable as I think we're supposed to think he is. And then like, so he makes a joke in here. He goes like, have you seen Ahmadinejad? Like, he looks like a snitch on Miami Vice. Can he not wear a tie or something? And like, I just love that little joke. Yeah, it's just like, who, really? Like, is he, what's going on here? What's really going on here? Just as as a person who enjoys like comedy, watching the scenes, it was enjoyable, like, purely from an angle of like watching two comedic actors that are trying to get each other to laugh.
Yeah.
You know, like there is that energy to enjoy from it where you're like, as you're watching it, you're like, oh, is Nadal laughing a little bit? Like he's like smiling a little bit because like Sacha got him. You know what I mean? Like he threw him off and he's like, ooh, I'm still trying to improv, but fuck you got me on that one. You know, like I enjoy seeing the little like, ooh, what are they saying that's trying to get someone like off of their game or whatever. Yeah. Like I enjoy that energy in and of itself. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, like I said, like some of the scenes, there is that feeling of like, all right, but snip that off before it goes on a little too long. You know? There's a thing where like his double gets shot and he spends an extended time period like just looking at the dead body and going like, oh, you're going to be okay, and da-da-da-da. And it's just like the camera's just lingering on like how freaky the dead body looks like, and it kind of feels like the only gag they have is look at how freaky the dead body looks. And the joke ends with like, oh, like he doesn't realize that the guy's dead, I guess. But there's the quick thing of like, oh, you know, I'm doing the neck chop thing, like, you know, off this guy too, because he's not getting what I'm saying, you know. But it's just kind of like, you're really pushing for these jokes, like just get to the point.
So I feel like we should kind of stop and like take note of the plot a little bit.
Oh yeah, all right.
Yeah. So
such as it is.
Yeah. So essentially, we established that that his uncle, who is played by Sir Ben Kingsley,
Gandhi himself.
So his uncle was probably should have inherited office. Instead, Aladdin inherited the office when he was 7 years old. And, you know, it's obvious to the viewer that this uncle is very resentful. But, you know, Aladdin is clueless. And he has just done ridiculous things like changed, you know, half of the words in the language to Aladdin.
So that words like positive and negative are both just Aladdin.
There's a pretty funny throwaway where it's the doctor is telling the guy, so good news.
Would you like to hear the Aladdin news?
He says, would you like to hear the Aladdin news or the Aladdin news? And he says, the Aladdin news. And then he says, your results were Aladdin. And then it's just this lingering shot on the guy's face going from like, trying to register what's happening. It's so good. That was some brilliant comedy right there. But he, you know, we're seeing his pathetic, lonely, overprivileged life. And having paid sex with Megan Fox and cuddling his pillow because she won't stay and cuddle him. And then he is supposed to go to New York for basically to give a speech at the UN, right?
And to sign an agreement.
To sign a peace agreement?
Yes.
And so he goes to New York, and we have a very brief cameo, and I don't think this character ever appears again after this initial the Bob C. Riley character.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yes, well...
Wait, does he?
He appears right in the next scene to torture him.
Right. But I'm saying after the beginning, we never see him
lit
again.
on fire, so he's dead.
Right, he's a corpse. I forgot he actually burned up.
So the reason why, they're going over there is because, there's lots of talks about how Wadia is, an unjust nation. So, we're going to clear it up and go over there, and we're going to say a bunch of flowery bullshit. But, we're going to go over there and, try to look good for the rest of the world. So, and part of it is they order a body double so that order another one after the first guy gets killed. I think
that body double is the funniest part of the whole movie. I think maybe I have the sense of humor of a 12-year-old for that, but I thought the body double. So the body double is this goat farmer who is also played by Sacha Baron Cohen. Yes. He's a very good double. He's this goat farmer who conveniently looks exactly like Aladdin and is almost as stupid. Yeah. And at one part they're saying okay, put him through the process and do this, fix his teeth and do this and shorten the penis. And there's just this close up on his face, just going, oh.
Okay, that was good.
It was just so I love the subtlety. It wasn't this over the top whoa. It was just him going, oh.
But then there's the legitimate question how would you shorten the penis?
not in any way that's gonna be enjoyable. And John C. Reilly, who I just have to share my favorite description of John C. Reilly ever, was from Daniel Lavery on the Dear Prudence podcast, once described John C. Reilly as looking like the Prince of the Goblins.
Aw, leave him alone.
No, it was a compliment.
Yeah, leave my boy Billy Cox alone.
He said, I love John C. Reilly. He looks like the Prince of the Goblins, and I love him with my whole heart. Aww. And I was just that's just my favorite description.
But I just hate, part of this is also just the blocking of this scene. It just seems so stiff where it's just now Aladdin walks up and here is the racist guy and he's and I am here to spout the racist talking points.
He was going in as sort of a bodyguard character, so the blocking didn't strike me as too stiff.
I get what
but
you're saying.
it was very it feels dated now because it was a very Patriot Act, Bush years, Homeland Security.
And also just the dialogue, in addition to how it just started, how it looked set up, what I mean?
It's just weird thinking about that. I'm going on a slight tangent here, but it's weird thinking about the political reality of now versus, back then. And back then it was all about being worried about terrorists and Arabs and even I feel like the dialogue was a little clumsy because he's even, everybody's an Arab, the blacks are Arabs.
I hated that.
It's just
come on, racist people aren't blind. They can tell the difference between.
Because it's okay, yes, the racists think that I've heard of even Indian people getting attacked.
I can see that.
But to say black people are
and
Arabs,
French people are Arabs? What?
Well, yeah, which is ironic if you know anything about the way French treat.
Exactly. But he wouldn't know that, right? But still.
But it was a little bit over the top, and it was very, very much a specific. It was a specific moment of the Bush years because now it's everybody's scared of Mexicans. It's the racism is just shifted.
It always shifts. Yeah,
it just moves around.
You can't just go away. No.
But so he
So I think it's the very next scene because it's weird. It happens so quick.
It happens very quickly that he basically he finds himself tied in a basement to a chair, and the John C. Reilly character is torturing him. Or is about to torture him, and there's a pretty funny exchange where he's sitting there going, "Oh, those torture implements. Oh, those are really old-fashioned." Or I think that that brand didn't it come with the this and that,
Yeah, John C. Reilly plays the despondent dude who's getting shown up so well, where he's just oh, well, I don't even want to torture you anymore.
That was pretty great, but so he and conveniently enough. One of the first things he does to him is cut off his beard, and so that he doesn't have to go through the entire movie with that beard on, and then he accidentally catches the beard. Well, he catches the beard on fire, and it catches him on fire.
Yeah.
And then John C. Reilly burns up, and conveniently, only the ropes binding Aladdin to the chair burn up.
Yeah.
And he's able to escape and run out in his underwear and take clothes from a homeless man.
Yeah, and so he says, like, as he's leaving, he says, I'll come back and get help for you. JK, just kidding. And it's like, why didn't you just say JK? Why did, like, I think people know what JK means.
Well, no, I feel like that was, like, an intentional comedic bit. Because you know how, like, Rachel Ray will say, like, EVOO, extra virgin olive oil. Like, she always will, like...
What? No, I don't know that.
No, there are people who do that. There are people who insist on saying acronyms and then also saying the thing the acronym is short for.
That feels like an old person. It's like,
I mean,
Sacha Cohen, you're old.
I mean, you know, he's not a baby.
It actually was crazy. Like, I remember, finding out he was like in his 40s, like while like at probably like the height of his, you know, acting career, which is like, whoa, that's interesting.
It makes me happy to find out people are older.
That is good. It makes me feel good. It makes
I know,
me feel
right?
good. Yeah, because you're like, oh, good.
Oh,
yeah.
Not everybody's a wonderkind who's
Exactly.
wildly successful by the time they're 17 years old.
Well, I was thinking one because like he looks like he's a good-looking guy.
He
like
is very
when as soon as the beard comes off and you're just like looking at his face, just like. Actually, this just looks like a handsome like guy.
Yes. Oh my god.
He could play Aladdin. Or
my thirst corner. Yes. My thirst corner in this movie. He is so fucking good looking in this movie when he doesn't have the Aladdin beard, because it's like, okay, we had him, you know, as Ali G, where he's got all the shit on him and the goggles and stuff.
Where he looks like a fool.
Right. And then he's Borat with the terrible mustache and the terrible hair. And then he's, you know, Bruno, which is a mess.
Yeah.
And then here he's just basically looking like himself.
Yeah.
And my thirst corner in this movie is dedicated to this one, like, 1.5 second moment. And if I were cleverer with this kind of thing, I would have made a gif of it. But there is a moment later on in the movie where he is like belly dancing through the grocery shop, where he's like wearing an apron and booty shorts and like belly dancing, and it's literally like a 1.5 second moment in the movie. Well, that's because you're straight. And it's and yeah, that's my whole thirst corner, is the moment that he's like kind of like dancing with his hips. Like,
well, shoot, if we're gonna talk about thirst corners, I think we need to have
Anna
a second.
Faris is fucking adorable.
Oh my god, and
she is so cute. They try to make her look like
dumpy and average, and it's just like, it's not working.
No, she looks like an adorable little pixie, and there's nothing you can do to make her not cute.
And the thing is like, she's so funny when you can tell like she's really working with a good bit that she has. But I hate that for the most part she kind of gets tossed to the side, like, especially for comedic, like letting her have real comedic moments. Like, she had one great comedic moment early on where she was like, oh, I went to a feminist like a workshop acting class, or oh help, I need to get out of the glass ceiling or something like that. She was miming.
I thought that bit kind of cringy. I do think,
I thought it was funny because it was like the white girl thing. Like, I thought that was what she was playing on, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I do think she's very funny, and I agree. Like, I feel like the character was like, it didn't give her a whole lot.
No, but and I was annoyed because I thought that it was going to play, because like, okay, these are all shitty characters in this movie. What I thought it was going to be like, okay, Aladdin is the shitty dude who, you know, runs this third world country. Like, she is the shitty, you know, white American woman who thinks she's helping but isn't. Like, I thought that, and then like, if you look into it, she's actually like kind of a little xenophobic, because like they started off where there was like one or two jokes that she kind of did that was kind of like, oh, wait a minute, hey, that's a fucked up thing for you to say. But like, they don't go all the way with it.
She says something like she's bragging about how she hasn't had a white boyfriend since high school.
Yes, and I was like, oh, okay, so yeah.
And it is the kind of thing that's like that, you know, trying to be so woke you done fell back asleep.
Exactly, yeah. And I think there was another joke where it's like, as she gets Aladdin out of prison, like,
she says like, maybe he just wanted to take them out for a falafel, and he goes, that's stereotypical. But
that's a little stereotypical. But
I did like how his moment of falling in love with her was watching her in slow motion, just like spittle flying out of her mouth as she's bawling somebody out.
Yeah.
And then that was his moment of falling in love with her.
That's what made me laugh particularly in that scene where Aladdin says, oh, that's a little stereotypical, but I get what you're saying. And it's just like, you just look at Sacha Baron Cohen like, this whole movie, like I think like that's such a good laugh moment because like it really pays off. Like
this you know, yeah,
like,
yeah.
Oh, is she being a little stereotypical? Oh, is she marginalizing people?
Oh, by the way, this just the falafel thing reminded me of food and the burger. Okay, so the way he comes up with his fake name, I just love.
He's such a dumbass.
I just loved this. I loved this bit where it could have been such a like tired bit where he's riding along on the back of her moped and she asks what his name is and they go past like a burger place that has an actual human name on it, like it's so-and-so's Burgers.
Yeah, like Tony's Burgers.
And he's like, Burgers. And it was, yeah. I loved that it was, you know, it was that sort of subversion, like that small subversion where, you know, it wasn't the tired thing. And then, of course, later they bring it back where he's just coming up with names based on everything he sees.
The men's washroom. Like he's trying to contort
Laddie's washroom.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, the reason why she notices him is that he's shouting because you see the double. Ben Kingsley's character is using the double that he's pretending is actually Aladdin in order to use him as a puppet to be like, hey, we're gonna, you know, if I'm gonna rule the country through this idiot, I'm gonna use it to like get me some oil money and, you know, all this sort of stuff so I can make some deals with China and America so they can get a piece of the country, and I don't give a shit about, you know, the culture. I'm just, you know, trying to get my bank and get out. Like that's supposed to be the dichotomy.
The Chinese dignitary.
Yes, played by Bobby Lee.
Oh my god,
this
he
man
was
had
so
me dying.
funny.
Yo.
He was so fucking funny. He's like, he plays this like just demented little sex monster.
Yes. I really wish the movie was about him, honestly, because he is playing what Aladdin is doing, but I think it's like because he gets less time, but like he plays it so perfectly and hitting to what's going on, like what is it? He talks about famous people and what he does to them, and he just says it so casually, like he's like, oh yeah, Tommy Lee Jones let me wriggle it in my hands for $200,000. I was like, oh my god, just the fact that he's a Tommy Lee Jones of all celebrities. Like he knew that would be that weird image that would go in your head.
And I think in some way you see Edward Norton coming out of a bathroom with him, and it's of course Edward Norton playing himself. And I usually hate celebrities playing themselves, but it worked really well in this movie, I thought. He sees the body double going by in the limo and starts shouting, he's not the legitimate leader.
He's not the legitimate leader.
And she assumes that he's a dissident and starts chanting, and then he...
Yeah, because he incites a riot by jumping up and...
Right, he tries to jump up, and the cops start hosing everybody, and she pulls him out of there, and they escape together, and that's, and so she takes him to her food co-op in Brooklyn that is staffed entirely by political refugees, conveniently enough. And of course, she takes him to be a political refugee.
Yeah, there was a really corny joke in there about how like, you can wash up in the lesbian bathroom. It's just like, what? Why would you need a lesbian?
Yeah,
that doesn't make any.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a.
It's like a joke for
not very targeted, but it was kind of a funny thing that he gets clothes out of the secondhand bin because he's wearing a homeless guy's clothes, where he just looks sort of dirty, and then he gets these clothes out of a secondhand bin that are like booty shorts and a little like pink baby doll t-shirt.
Yeah, I mean at first he looks like a freaking Freddy Krueger character with the like striped but ripped
and
shirt.
Then he goes and gets like basically he then looks like a rent boy.
Yeah, he like shopped at the Baby Gap.
Right, and he wears these clothes the entire rest of the movie.
Like, wait, he's not
like
changing.
At no point does he change out of these clothes. He's wearing these booty shorts and this little pink baby doll t-shirt for the rest of the movie, and I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. Yeah.
Oh, what were you gonna say?
Oh no. So basically, she tries to get him to start working at the shop, and shenanigans occur.
Yeah, and he ends up basically. I think he ends up fucking it up because like he's walking around town feeling bad, and the infamous song for when you feel bad plays "Everybody Hurts." By REM, except it's being sung in Arabic.
Yeah. Well, so then I really love that he sees a Wadesian restaurant and he goes in and it is the We Hate Aladdin restaurant.
Yes.
And it is staffed and all of the entire staff and all the patrons are people that he thought he had executed.
Absolutely. In fact, like, it shows you a mini montage of like all the people and all the instances of what this I thought was the best moment of the movie.
It was really good. And then he looks at a steak and he flashes back to like commanding somebody to have the cow executed, which in that case he was apparently successful.
Yeah. But like even he looks confused, like he's like, oh, wow, just fucking do it. But yeah, right before that happens, you know, he's walking around looking sullen and feeling bad, and then he sees Nadal working at an Apple store.
Right.
And he's like, huh?
So
that's the first thing he sees.
Nadal was the missile guy, and I can't remember, Nadal. I'm saying, does Nadal like come out after him at that point? Or
I think Sacha Baron Cohen sees him and like grabs him. I think it's like that sort of thing. Like, hey, I thought you were dead, and he's like, what are you doing here? You know, it's that sort of like, what's going on?
Yeah. And then you know, he gets recognized at the We Hate Aladdin restaurant.
Yes.
That's the scene where he's like trying to make up all these fake names because the waiter's questioning him, and he's about to get torn to pieces when Nadal comes and rescues him and says, oh, this is my idiot cousin, and reveals that he wants to help Aladdin come back into power so that he can then be the head of the missile program again.
Yeah, bit of a flimsy reasoning why to help this person who is universally hated by everyone you know, but okay. And then they do have the bit of the justifying joke where he's like, you know, why would I help you? Why would I, help you do what you're doing? He says like, it's like, I have a good life here. It's like, well, what do you do here? And he's like, mostly clean jizz out of laptops.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I'll help you, but only if you let me, run the nuclear arsenal again. And I just wrote another note because I forgot to finish my thirst corner. Anna Faris is so cute. She's so damn cute with that short hair. They want her to not be cute so bad. They're like, ooh, she has armpit hair. Oh, like, no.
They can't make her not cute. Yeah. They can't do it.
And it's like, and it kind of annoys me because, like, don't you kind of see that a lot, though? Like, it's like the Married with Children vibe of, like, oh, I wouldn't have sex with this cow. And then you look over, it's like, it's the chick who does the voice of Leela. Like, on voice alone, she's hot. Like,
right. Well, and it's like, it's weird because it's like, okay, she's the romantic interest in a movie. Like, obviously, she's gonna be hot. Like, obviously, and I think, I don't know, I don't think we're supposed to take it that, I don't think we're supposed to believe she's actually unattractive. I think we're just supposed to think that he's, like, a misogynistic jerk.
Yeah.
So he's talking to her like that.
True.
But, yeah.
And but it also just makes it like, again, like, there is that level of like, this is a comedy, so it's supposed to be wacky. It's not supposed to be a believable relationship. But there's that one level where you're just kind of like, but
he's such a dick to her the whole time.
He clearly doesn't like her, and then it's like, oh, but now I like her, and it's like, no, you don't. You weren't doing anything that indicates that you like this person, and she should not be liking you back. Like, what? Like, I hate that they like just try to excuse it just by doing little things of like, oh, I noticed you did this nice thing. Wow, now I'm looking at you. And it's just that's it. That's all they ever do. I do feel
like there was a little bit, and it's got that bite that you pointed out of her, she's got some flaws also. And there's a little bit of her, going back to Borat, how so many of these people would put up with horrible, horrible shit from Borat because they were patronizing him, and that felt like with her, like, he comes up into her office and, like, basically tries to get her to suck his penis.
Yeah.
While, I don't know why I said penis. Tries to get her to go down on him while acting as if his dick is this, like, huge gift of the gods.
Yeah.
And, and he, like, is miming sucking his dick while he's holding his fingers together like he's got the tiniest little joint. It's like, you telling on yourself. But, and she, instead of being, offended or going like, hey, that's fucked up, get out of my office, she goes, oh, okay, you're having urges, let me, like, help you out.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like he's a child, and it's like, and it is that she's patronizing him because you know, deep down, you can tell there's a little bit of her feeling like she's superior to him because she's from North Africa.
Yeah, yes. And I wish that was played up more.
Yeah.
Because they sacrificed that, like, for having a love story.
It was underplayed.
Yeah. Like, and it would have been better if there honestly wasn't a love story and it was this ugly American trying to be nice to this foreigner guy.
Or even if it was still a love story, but a fucked up love story. It's like,
absolutely.
He's a horrible misogynistic dick. She is putting up with it because she thinks he's a simple foreigner who can't help it.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I feel like if they'd played that up more, that would have been funnier. And I feel like Anna Faris would have done a good job with that and, like, really kind of gotten that bite.
Yeah. And then, okay, there's a montage of him, like, that looks like he's fucking with people, but, like, because there's a part where he's, like, on the street or something like that, and he's saying things that are like, oh, this is what this dictator would say, but to a normal person, that doesn't make any sense. Like, whoa, why would you say that? Like, yeah, that doesn't make, like, oh, he's talking about, like, how he knows Osama bin Laden and how, you know, he's a really annoying roommate. Like, yeah, if someone brought that up in random conversation, like, what? You're just hanging out with Osama bin Laden? What the fuck are you talking about? You know? And, like, there was an element of, like, it looked like they were doing something that was going to be like, oh, is he going to fuck with people in real life? Like, you see him, like, walking on the street, there's, like, some construction workers or something like that where it looks like he's, like, being escorted away from people. It's like, oh, is he, like, gonna, like, is this gonna be a little bit of a bit where it's like, oh, maybe we're gonna get him working at a convenience store and he's fucking with people. We're gonna get, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's just like, oh, no, it's just not.
Now, I will say I appreciated some of the plotting, some of the attention to detail was really good. Like, early on, it's established that the only two places in the city that grow this really special Wadesian fruit are Anna Faris's shop and then
this company called Green World.
And this Green World, which is basically Whole Foods. Yeah. I'm glad you remembered it because I was just gonna call it Whole Foods. So Green World.
Whole Foods stand-in.
Yeah. So Green World's, which is basically Whole Foods, and then Anna Faris's shop are the only two places that serve Wadesian fruit, and Anna Faris's shop, because they're one of only two places that has Wadesian fruit, gets the contract to cater this big event at the UN that Wadija is, you know, gonna sign this agreement. And then there's a gag where it's sort of during the whole, like, him working at the shop montage where he kicks this obnoxious kid, and you think it's just a one-off gag, and then later she's like, oh man, we lost the contract. The head of security said somebody kicked his kid while they were in the shop. So, you know, that was like a nice that was a nice callback. But of course he does manage to get her shop the contract again because he needs to be working as a caterer at the event to be able to get it and
so yeah, he does what he needs to do in order to get the contract back. And how he decides to do that, because he's got a little plan. So what he decides to do is he needs to get a beard in order to, you know, be able to come back.
This whole bit was so unnecessary.
Yes, absolutely. So he needs to get a beard in order to, to prove that he's the real Aladdin, but it needs to be the beard of, like, a respected person or something like that. So he goes to the funeral. The
funeral of a drug lord.
Yeah.
Who had a great beard.
Yeah. And there's a part with, like, JB Smoove, which, like, I kind of appreciated, but I really wish they would have just, like, let him actually, like, say some jokes. Because, like, he only gets one joke, and the whole thing is just, like, the Aladdin character being really offensive. And it's just like, I would have loved if this was a bantering thing instead of just him standing there and taking these racist jokes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, and they also, like, had this bit about the raping the 14-year-old boys.
That's where it was.
Out of nowhere for no reason. And he was wearing this, like, really sharp suit.
Oh, yeah,
which, like,
he looked like he was...
That was the one time that he changed out of the baby doll t-shirt.
Well, I think that was because they thought they were trying to blend in with the black people, but their perception of black people is from the 70s.
Right. I mean... Not gonna lie, he looked sharp.
Yeah, I mean, he looked pretty sharp.
But yeah, so, like, there were two bits actually in the movie that bothered me for the specific reason that it was so anatomically ridiculous it took me out of it. And one of the bits involved this guy's head because they cut off his head to steal the beard.
Yeah.
And then later you see Aladdin pranking Nadal with the head, using it like a puppet.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not how human heads work.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very obviously a rubber mask.
Absolutely.
It's not how heads work, and it's just so, like...
And, like, okay, they only need the beard. They literally just need the beard. They could just throw the head away, like, the next second, but they use it for, like, 3 or 4 goddamn gags, and it's like, the first time is, like, a real quick, like, oh, that's messed up. This guy's an a-hole. Why would he do
then
that?
he like, they go on and on with it, and it's like, and the more you look at this obvious rubber mask, and it's just like, that's not how heads work. You can't just stick your hand up in the neck of somebody's severed head and use it like a puppet without hollowing it out or something. And then later, there's a scene where a woman who's this actress? She's from SNL, right?
Oh, dang, I didn't catch her.
I can't remember her name. But this actress I think she's from SNL. She's giving birth in the shop, and Aladdin decides he's going to help give birth to the baby, and then Anna Faris helps. And at one point, both Aladdin and Anna Faris's character have their entire hands inside this woman's vagina.
Yeah.
And then you like get a shot from inside the womb where the baby's in there, and it's just like this red cave with their hands sticking in, and like just her vagina right there, like the opening of a bag or something, and it's like, okay. Pro tip: if you ever see a lady going into going into labor in front of you, don't stick your hand up her vagina. That is not how that works.
But again, like, the scene is so ridiculously dumb and over the top. Like, he literally, like, opens her vagina real quick to go, like, hey, stay in there real quick, I'll be right there, and then, like, closes them again.
Because he loses his cell phone up her vagina, and it's just, like, those bits, like...
It's just a flap hole that just opens and closes.
Yes, and it's, like... And again, it's something that, like, if it were an SNL sketch, or, like, I guess if SNL were allowed to do that, like, if it were like sketch comedy, it would have been funny. But in the context of the movie, it was just so over the top.
Well, see, I thought you were going to talk about, cause I was still thinking about the heads thing. Okay, so real quick, I thought one gag was funny because it was unexpected, where he's like, well, how did you get the Green World contract back to us? And it's like, it turns out they had some pretty bad, customer service or something like that. And then,
and they put the head in the...
Yeah,
and like, if they had just done that, because also they could have shot that in such a way that you weren't, like, looking at something that's very obviously not a human head.
Absolutely. For
an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And that just, again, like, the whole bit with the puppeting the head felt like an SNL sketch. It didn't feel like part of the movie.
Yeah. Like, I think it's Nadal's taking a shower, and he just comes in with the head like, I don't know, and it's just like, and it's like, why would... All right, but then it happens like the next day when he's asleep or something like that, and it's just like, okay, 2 in a row, like you're belaboring the gag.
Yeah. Now I will say, so this happened like a ways back, but I meant to mention it that I thought was really funny was the scene with the body double where Uncle Ben Kingsley is trying to like ply him with women because the body double is a goat herder, and apparently all he knows is goats, and all he understands is goats. And so these, hot women in lingerie are in his room, and we just hear like commotion, and Ben Kingsley comes in. And he's like, and the body double is like kicked the woman across the room and is like freaked out. And he goes, she tried to milk me. And then, and the uncle says, no, they're trying to pleasure you. They want to make you feel good. Enjoy them. And then he comes back in a little while later. And this woman, it's the fact that she just looks so like whatever about it, like she doesn't like the thing is the woman does not look like she's being degraded. She just looks like, okay, this is happening, this weirdo's doing this.
I mean, like, people have their
like she does not care at all. And he also and he doesn't look like it's sexual for him in any way. He's just like, oh, milk, this is what I do. And it's just so stupid.
I will say, okay, so again, going back to Nadal and Sacha Baron Cohen moments. So the scene before they get on the helicopter, I thought was hilarious. Where he's doing like, because Nadal saying give a small and understated performance. I urge you, keep your performance small and real. And he goes like, and Aladdin's like, yes, I'm just going to do my Chinese accent. And then he's like, no, don't do the Chinese accent.
Yeah.
He's like, no, you see they replaced the L's with that. It's like, stop it. And he goes like, he's like, what are you talking about? I'm a great actor. I won 16 awards. It's like, you gave those awards to yourself. Like, I love that sort of like dressing down of who he is.
And they actually, that was nice because they sort of foreshadowed that early on where they have him like hosting the Wadijin Games and having him win the race by shooting all the other runners.
Yeah, and just shooting people randomly anyway. Like, it would just be someone who had nothing to do with anything, and he was just like, you could just see he was like, I feel like shooting. Yeah, but I just loved how he like continually kept choosing like, oh, I'm a Filipino, I take care of the kids, and it's like, stop doing that. Why do you think that this is a good performance?
Yeah.
It's like he's doing things like, I'm not even sure that's a stereotype. That's just wrong. That was so good to see, like, Nadal trying to control him.
Yes, yeah.
And but it was kind of funny, like, thinking of him saying, like, keep your performance small and real. You know, like, limit yourself. Think of, like, you know, maybe not doing everything that comes to mind. And I was like, yes, Sacha Baron Cohen, maybe you should have taken that advice. Don't do every joke that comes to mind. So I thought that was a good little meta joke there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about character motivation for a second.
Yeah.
So after the helicopter scene, which, again, a flimsy reason why that was even happening, because they were trying to scope out the place where the UN meeting was happening. So they
I didn't even like. I don't think I would have even been able to say why they were doing that.
Yeah, it was more important to the scene that they were doing. I said 9/11 and I'm talking in Arabic than like any actual plot that they were trying to do. Yeah, because it doesn't even make sense. But yeah, but then like after Anna Faris's character bails him out, like Nadal is there and he's like, hey, help me too, and he's like, oh, you'll be fine, and it's like, what? You just left the guy who's trying to help you in prison. And then later on in the film, like 15 minutes later, like Nadal just calls him like he's out of prison, and I guess I'm cool with the fact that you left me in prison, and like they continue the plan.
That was a weird little dropped bit there.
Yeah, they just, because I think I think during that part where I was thinking about that, they kind of like smoothed over it by like making all these jokes about him discovering masturbation for the first time. Yeah. And it just like felt so belabored, like, which I wouldn't have found out at all about. Well, I guess if you can get whatever sex you want.
He was very sheltered, and
and no one was gonna tell him about it, because I think Nadal kind of goes like, why didn't anybody tell me? He's like, what? You kill everyone who tells you anything.
I will say that was a moment of comedic bravery of him jerking off with just the worst O face for a very long sequence.
And then he says, this is another moment of, you know, female character in a comedy movie with a guy who's a douchebag. The douchebag says something really outlandish, and like I'm just like looking to see like how the woman is going to react to that, how we're going to keep the scene going after you just said something that was like clearly like any woman would be like, oh, time to back 1,000 feet away from this guy. Like the scene where he says where she says, oh, she thinks he's been raped, he's like, we have to get you to a rape center or something like that, and he goes like, oh, there are rape centers, that's great, I can get my raping shoes, we can rent a limousine, and it's just like, what? But then she just goes like, well, anyway, and it's just like, no.
Well, and I feel like that would have maybe made a little more sense if they had again played up her, you know, patronizing attitude
Absolutely.
towards him.
You can make that work,
oh,
but they didn't.
He just doesn't know what he's saying, or he doesn't know any better, or whatever, you know, this poor benighted, you know.
That would have been really slick if they would have worked on that more. And like, you see moments where they clearly could have, but they were so worried about making quick little quip jokes instead of like making a cohesive plot. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? There's points where it feels like Sacha Baron Cohen has to have the last laugh in a scene. Like there's times where I felt like Nadal made the good last joke, and then it's like, oh, but he had to have one other one really quick. Where it's like, what? And yeah, I wrote the head in the green world store was good. The baby delivery scene, I literally wrote because I watched it the first time, and you know, movies just watch a movie the first time. The second time I'm watching it, as it unfolds, it's literally like some other thing is happening, and then Anna Faris is like, "Oh no, someone's having a baby. Is anyone a doctor?" And he goes, I am the #1 doctor in Wadia. And he comes over and immediately starts taking off his pants and pulling his outer legs. And he goes like, oh, I'm sorry, force of habit. Let's get it. And again, it's just like such a cheap, stupid joke. Like, like, you know, it's just such a cheap, like, oh, and then, like, he keeps going in her asshole when trying to, like, go for the baby. And it's just like, I think, okay, so, like, it was kind of corny as it kept happening, but then the guy who was with the girlfriend made a joke that actually, like, just the way he commented on it just made me laugh, where he was just like, dude, just go up from where you are.
Yeah, I liked, he was good because he was like, I don't want to say, like, reacting realistically exactly, but, like...
The boyfriend guy?
Yeah, he just felt a lot more natural.
Yes, he felt like a human person reacting to what this crazy character is doing.
Right.
And it felt like for the first time this is happening in this movie.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, he was really good.
Yeah, and I think the girlfriend was also pretty good too. Like, she had to deal with, like, oh, just have to be okay with this guy putting a cell phone in my pussy, but whatever. Like, but she realistically reacts in certain ways, and she's like, "Hey,
yeah,
get your fucking thing out of my pussy."
That couple was one of the better parts, actually. Although it was like they were good, the bit was not.
Yeah,
like,
no.
I'm just like, again, it's like the ridiculousness of the anatomy there would have been funny in like a weird sketch show. Like, it felt like something from like just one of those like really off the wall sketch comedy shows.
Yeah.
But in the movie, it was just like, come on. Like, we're supposed to be at least a little bit in the real world, right? Yeah. Like, it's not supposed to be that surreal.
I think there's just like, there's something about like the way Sacha wants to do comedy where he wants to make it so over the top that's supposed to be what makes you laugh. But it's like, there needs to be some sort of tension where it's just like believability to some capacity where you're still able to follow the character, because if you're just doing the gag machine, I think your brain after a certain while just goes like, I'm not really watching a movie where there's real stakes. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, oh no, this is just the gag factory, hour. You know what I mean? And with this in particular, like, usually there's gross out stuff in his movies, but there's some sort of narrative reason why it's happening. This is just out of butt fucking nowhere. Like, I had to rewind the scene to be like, wait, is that really just how it goes? Like, he has no connection to this whatsoever. It's just like...
It's just happening. Well, and I guess, like, the plot justification for it is that that's the moment that, like, Anna Faris's character is like, wow, this guy's really something. Yeah. They have that moment of connection.
And literally the only reason why it happens is because their hands are in her vagina at the same time. She's like, that was my hand that you just touched. And they're like... And it's just like, they just look at each other like, this means we're in love now. And it's just like, again, I know that we can't have a detailed romantic comedy, but...
You don't fall in love with somebody by accidentally holding their hand.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is like a Goofy movie levels of like trying to write a romantic plot. And that's like a, silly Disney comedy from the 90s. Like, come on, be a little... Write a little better than this.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, no, I literally, when I saw that happening, I think I, like, paused the movie. I was like, no, but, yeah, because I think, like, there was one part where it zooms in on Sacha's face after he said something really goofy or ridiculous. And I just remember pausing the movie and really just going, like, no, but narratively, why is this happening right now, Sacha? Like, and it was just, like, such a moment where we were just, like, paused right on his face, like, oh, particularly goofing towards the camera. And I just paused looking at him, like, but why is this here, though?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just all further reveal of the romance plot with the music flourish as they touch each other's hands in the woman's pussy.
Right. And then they have a big romantic thing on the roof where they're about to have sex, and then he reveals to her that he is...
Yeah, he has to tell her the truth.
He tells her the truth, and she predictably... And it's a very, like, rom-com moment where he tells her the truth, she flips out, oh my god, I can't believe you're this horrible dictator.
Honestly, I feel like it's probably the most realistic part of the whole damn movie.
And then
because she goes, are you...
Oh, no, I was... Go.
I want to describe what happened in that scene before you went on. Because, like, she specifically says... Because, again, this is the most realistic I feel she's ever been. He goes, like, oh, no, I'm not actually a bad guy. My friend just had to chop off the head of Morgan Freeman. And she goes, like, oh, my God, you're awful. And he goes, like, what have I ever done wrong? He says, you lied to me. And you're wanted for war crimes. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, what were we saying?
So then he wanders around having a darker night of the soul, and he actually is about to jump off of, I think it's the Brooklyn Bridge. Yes! It might be the Williamsburg Bridge.
Yeah.
But he's about to jump off a bridge, and Nadal comes up and gives him a pep talk.
Oh, yeah. Oh, specifically, right before he does the little walk of shame, he sees a newscast of, Wadians celebrating the deal going through. And, there's like, what do the people of Wadia have to say about, what's happening? And one of the guys is like, we just have to say this to Aladdin, and he puts up his middle finger and starts spinning around and just goes, swivel, swivel. And everyone starts doing swivel, swivel. I was like, that is funny.
I think I missed that part somehow, or maybe it was
it might have been cut out of the...
Maybe, or I just missed it. I don't know. It's possible that was just my attention span.
So yeah, he's about to commit suicide. Then Nadal drives up in his car, and the first thing I'm thinking of, like, okay, how the hell does he know where he is? But then immediately he says, oh, Nadal, you've come to talk me down from, suicide. He says, what are you talking about? You texted me 60 times to come get you and where your specific address was. And I was like, okay, that's good. Because, he would be this little prince bitch boy who wants someone to come, talk to him, and this is how he, whines for attention. That was such a good character beat moment. You know what I mean? And then... and I love this moment where he goes, so they're talking back and forth and having a bit, and Sacha is talking to Nadal, and he goes oh, you are such a schmuck, and Nadal goes what? Are you speaking Yiddish? And he goes he says, yeah, I'm in New York, I picked it up. And this is the part where he goes he says, and Nadal's going back with him, it's we're trying to wipe them off the map, what is wrong with you? And he goes he says, I don't like the people, but I like the way that the words sound like what they mean to say. And that made me laugh so hard. Yeah. Because to me, that I feel was the smartest bit of comedy in this movie. How it kind of shows how if someone, anyone was just exposed to someone else's culture and to see the beauty of it and the interesting thing of it is wow, it's cool how the culture, the words sound like this, and I want to say them too because the words are really cool, and I can appreciate the culture and how beautiful it is. It's if you had only had that moment, you realize that these people are just people, but because you're already built up in this way of well, no, these are these people, and oh yeah, they have that thing that's kind of interesting, but I'm not supposed to like them though. You know what I mean? I think it was it reminded me of it's I think it was in Do the Right Thing, where that one Italian guy who's hates black people, the average black person, always has some issue with black people, but loves Michael Jordan and Prince, and you know what I mean? And it's this sort of it's oh, well, they're not really black guys. I don't know, it's different. It's if you just see the humanity of all people, you know what I mean? It's that sort of and I think there was a Boondocks episode. Yes, that's what I was especially thinking of. It was Uncle Ruckus, the real sellout dude, decides he's gonna do country music, and he sends a demo tape to this white racist country singer, and the white racist guy really likes the music, so he goes to try to find him, and comes across Uncle Ruckus, and he's well, you can't have been the guy who sang because you're this black guy. He's oh yeah, well, I'm actually his butler, and he's coming back in a couple of days, so he's yo, yeah, hang out with me for a while, and he hangs out with him, talks to him, has a good time with Uncle Ruckus, because they're just having a good time relating and making jokes, and he goes you're a pretty good Negro, man, I ain't really talked to many of them, but if they're like you, man, I think they're all right. And it's just this is literally how this is. It's if people just talk to people, this would be an issue, but it's how we're so initially divided and shit. And it was such a small thing. I don't think they were trying to think that deep into it, but it was just such a small thing. They were being this guy is supposed to be so hateful, but when he's just allowed to be in the world for just a second, he lets his guard down and is able to go oh no, that's really, I like the language. That's really cool. You know what I mean? I thought that was a good riff on that sort of thing.
Yeah. So this is the denouement where he gets Nadal talks him off the ledge or comes and gets him, and they have this plot to get into the UN. And okay, so I am scared of heights, and I am such a little bitch about it. I know I am. I even seeing in a movie, it freaks me out. So this bit where he's having to he's got a line strung between the two buildings, and he's got a zip line across. Oh my god, I was asshole clenched the whole time. And so he's trying to zip line across between these two buildings, and gets stuck halfway through, and it's like, oh, but I balanced it perfectly. You've got too much weight on you. And so he's emptying his pockets. And while he's emptying his pockets, he's like holding on with one hand to this like little tiny handle. And I'm just like, ah.
But what's specifically funny is that like he takes out like a drink or something like that, and is like, what is that doing? You know, Nadal's like, what is that doing in your pockets? Oh, it has the the potassium of like 3 bananas. And he drops it. And he's like, well, it's still not going across. So, look in your pockets. And he pulls out 3 bananas. He's like, what are you doing with 3 bananas in your pockets? It's like, I didn't believe the ad about the drink.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty ridiculous. But then, of course, it's like, no, you're still too heavy. And he reveals that he has not shit since he left Wadija.
Oh my God.
And so he shits on the street. And now this was pretty funny, where this was, again, one of those subversions where there's a lady yelling, "Stop, thief!" and this guy's running off with her purse, and you think the shit's gonna land on the thief. No, it lands on the lady.
And it happens so perfectly. The timing is so perfect. This might be one of the best shit jokes of all time. Because it happens so quick. Like, you're barely registering what's happening. It's like, oh, the woman's pro.
Yep.
I wanted to bring up this thing real quick because I think this was a great line that Nadal says, like, as he's about to like jump or whatever. He's saying like, look at you, you're a loser. You need to like do better. And he says like, look at you, you're wearing Crocs. And like Aladdin's like, what's wrong with Crocs? And he's like, Crocs are the symbol of a man who is, they're the universal symbol of a man who has given up hope. You might as well put on sweatpants and go to Applebee's for the rest of your life. And I was like, oh shit, that's a good ass burn. That was so specific with how the burn was. It's like, that was so good in a specific way. Like, that had to be a riff. Like, that had to be you improvising that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then he says, like, it's like, you have to do this for all the other dictators that aren't here anymore. Kim Jong-il, Saddam Hussein, Cheney. Like
that, yeah.
The way he said
it was
so
a very Bush years thing, but it was funny, yeah.
And so
even though this was obviously made during the Obama administration, because there's literally footage of Obama, but it still felt like that holdover of the Bush years.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so we get to the actual conference, and the two people doing the commentary on it, one of them is Jerry, the dad from Rick and Morty.
Right, yeah, no, and I was thinking, like, what is that actor's name? Because I was thinking of Cyril Figgis.
Yeah,
from,
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, he's also Cyril from Archer. He's in a lot of stuff, and he was Dr. Spaceman on 30 Rock, Dr. Spachimin, and I think was on SNL. What is that guy's name?
And he did some commercials with like Progressive, where he's doing like the voice of like the thing that's gonna save you money or something like that. I forget his name.
It is Chris Parnell. His name.
Parnell. I should have remembered because I think he went to UNCSA.
Oh.
Look that up. Just make sure I'm not bullshit, because I think there's 2 Chris Parnells.
No. Chris Parnell. Oh wait, yeah, there is. Wait, there is another. No. Yeah, no. Okay, he just has grayer hair in some picture. But yeah, he was the Progressive Box.
Yes.
And let's see, Early Life. We're just like taking a total. He has like 2 seconds on screen. Oh, but I do want to say though, the woman that's doing the commentary with him, I feel like this was such an attack on a really specific type of bullshit 24-hour news thing, where she's like watching this footage and just speculating just the most absolute like bullshit way of like, well, he's drinking urine, and that just is showing that he thinks that they should drink the urine.
Yeah, specifically. So the setup is the stooge, the stool pigeon, who's been hired to pretend to be Aladdin. He's doing all these things because he doesn't understand. Yeah, because he doesn't understand how any of this goes. So he's just walking around doing things and going like, I'm peeing into this cup and I start drinking it. Would you like some? And so the commentators, they're trying to do everything. Like, they're looking at it as like seeing everything that he's doing as some sort of negative thing that's trying to like prove how evil they are. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was hilarious watching that sort of like, oh, well, yeah, we have to show that this guy's bad, so everything he's doing must be some sort of symbol of how evil he is. But yeah, it's so clearly like,
well, and it's just like
sense.
it's just like nothing she's saying has any value at all. Like, it's just ridiculous. But that's like, if you've got 24 hours of news to fill up, you gotta bullshit.
Yep.
So anyway, so he gets into the hotel, and he is supposed to kill the double, but he can't bring himself to do it. So showing that he's got some humanity to him now. And he goes to make the speech, and he rips up the agreement and says, no, fuck this.
Yeah, he says this constitution is nothing but a contract for oil companies.
Well, so he reveals what it is. Well, he does that later, because at first he's just like, no, Wadijah's going to stay a dictatorship. And everybody's booing. And then Anna Faris comes in, and he looks at her, and he's like, democracy, stupid, democracy. And then Anna Faris comes in, and he's looking at her, and he... starts talking about clearly her
democracy could use a shave, and
yeah,
has her upper lip could use a bit of a bleaching or something like that.
Yeah, and then at the end he sort of confesses his love to her, and she's like, oh. And then he says, I'm going to make a real agreement, and Wadijah's going to be a democracy, and everybody's just like, oh, okay, cool, and celebrates.
And Nadal's not okay with that. He's like, oh,
right,
come
Nadal's
on.
like, yeah. And then so we cut to sometime later.
Wait, because I do want to highlight, because the speech he gives is kind of like the grand social commentary, right?
Oh, yes, the dictatorship. Yes, how could I almost have skipped that? Yeah, where he says, dictatorships are great, America. If you were a dictatorship, you could do, and then he just names
imagine you could have 1% of your country have all of the wealth and bail out friends when they gamble and lose their companies. You could fill your jails with one racial group and no one would complain. It was just like, oh. I see what you're doing here, Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah.
But yeah, he sees Anna, has a change of heart. But again, it doesn't really seem to matter, because like the next thing we're shown is like, oh, there will be fair elections in Wadijah. And then the next thing you see is like people voting in one booth, and then like a tank rolling up and seeing them run over to the other. And it's like, well, okay.
Right, so like, and it's just like, okay, he didn't really change that much, guys.
And I was thinking,
and he declares himself President, Prime Minister, General, Admiral.
Right. And what I was thinking, like, this backwards character development would be funnier if it wasn't so basic and awkwardly timed. Like, it just needed to be, like I said, if you had the Anna Faris character who was more complicit in, like, the comedy of how scenes were playing out, that kind of showed like, oh, these people are both shitty, but they're kind of made for each other in that respect. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So they showed their wedding, which takes place on the balcony in front of everybody, and then at the end of the wedding, right after they kiss, she takes out a glass and smashes it, and that's how he finds out she's Jewish. It's like. And then like hugs her and does the like execute her over her shoulder. But then we like cut to later, and she's like saying on live TV that she's pregnant. So
yeah, again, and it's one of those things like, I mean, we're wrapping up the movie, and we need to end up, but it's like, it's so a thing where it's just like, you're not committing to these bits, you're not committing to these jokes, and it tells itself so quickly. Like, okay, yeah, you had the real thing of him going, cut her neck, the cutting neck motion. But the very next scene, she is alive.
Right. So, like, which, like, I guess could be a callback to, like, nobody's going to let him actually execute anybody. Yeah, and it's just, like, an old habit. But, so she says that she's pregnant on live TV, and he turns to her and says, so are you having a boy or an abortion?
Or an abortion. And again, and that's how the movie ends. It stops there. And I remember specifically saying, like, yeah, the movie has to end here. Because for fuck's sake, what person in the real world would react to that in any way that you could show next that wouldn't be, like, our relationship is over? What did you just say? Like, like, how can you do, like, what she was doing in the rest of the movie and just go, well, anyways, like, no. She said, if you're having a girl, we're killing it. Like... It's so just like over the top and like, oh my god.
It was also like it was a weird thing to end on, because you know, the misogyny is woven throughout, but it's not really the major theme.
Yeah.
And so to end on the like, oh yes, and we would obviously abort a female fetus, which is a problem in many parts of the world.
True.
Like sex selective abortions are actually a thing in many parts of the world, and they're a problem because they result in huge gender imbalances in populations, and then you have all these men who can't find partners, and it's just huge social problems. But ending on that note, when it wasn't as if like gender equality was a major theme.
Yeah, it feels like such a like this is your
it just felt
abortion joke.
It felt random, yeah.
So yeah, overall, how do you feel about this movie?
You know, for all we've had lots of critiques of it, we've had lots of criticisms of it. There are definitely a lot of things that I think are weak points, but overall, I really like it. I mean, it's certainly not my favorite. It's certainly not my favorite Sacha Baron Cohen movie. But I like it, and like I said, you know,
would you put it above Bruno?
Yeah, I think it's better than Bruno. I think it is better than Bruno. I think it's better than.
I would agree with that.
Well, because it's like its own thing, whereas Bruno just felt like it was trying to replicate Borat and failing.
Yeah.
So it's better than Bruno. It's not the best. It's not terrible. And you know, I feel like I feel kind of bad dumping on Kevin Smith right now, but like, given that, you know, our whole original season or what have you was about Kevin Smith, and after basically Dogma and Chasing Amy, it felt like he was just kind of riffing on himself.
Yeah.
You know, I've never, even the worst that Sacha Baron Cohen does when he's like maybe giving into his own like sort of like he's indulging himself too much.
Tropes.
It still doesn't feel like he's just going, hey, remember Borat? You know?
Yeah. There is always a feeling that he's trying to take things to the next level with his comedy.
Yeah.
Like you get the idea with each movie, I was trying to do something different from this in the like capacity of I was trying to say something about blah 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 or trying to say something about blah blah, right? Like you don't feel like, oh, I could have just watched Borat again, you know? Like no, this does feel like a different experience that is trying to say something, but like as tight, I mean, as poignant as I feel like some of the social commentary in this movie is, they just needed someone to shave, like someone who wasn't Sacha Baron Cohen and didn't love Sacha Baron Cohen to just come in and be like, no, in this here, no, in that there. You know what I mean? Like, and I see the perfect movie that this could have been.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it was like, I mean, there were weak spots, but that last speech that I almost breezed past, and I'm glad you stopped me, was really, and I think that was kind of the thesis for the movie.
Yeah, it brings it home.
Yeah, it feels like we're making fun of Muammar Gaddafi or whoever,
right?
But in actuality, we're skewering American politics here.
Yes, and like that's what makes it smarter, right? Where you're just like, ultimately, I'm trying to say, what is the difference between these? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, yeah, for sure. So, yeah, to that respect, is like, it has a good idea, and it does try to, you know, execute it, but it's not exactly his Charlie Chaplin Great Dictator, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you all for listening. Thank you to all the patrons and Ko-fi donations that keep us doing this show. Your support is appreciated beyond words. Special shout out to Thomas Schlosser, who is our most recent patron, who gets a shout out for being a $10 donator to our Review Anew Patreon. And if you'd like to donate, you can go to our Review Anew Patreon, available and all the links below wherever the hell this episode is posted. Anything else you want to say before we get the hell out of here?
Aladdin, motherfucker!
Well, until next time, this has been the Review Anew podcast. I'm DJ.
I'm Evan.
And until you hear us again, hey. Smoke weed every day.
Hey, Sacha will better episode. Hold up. Hey, Sacha will better episode. Hold up. Hey, Sacha will better episode. Hold up. Hey, Sacha will better episode. Sacha weed every day.